Hey everyone, this is week 3, day 5. Today going over the CRJ 700 minimum equipment list and CDL applications. We refer to the minimum equipment list as the MELs, so anytime in the past that you've been hearing me talk about MELs, it is referring to this specific list of things. We're going to go over the MEL manual, the CDL manual, MEL application, and then performance restrictive MELs. The first thing that you need to know the difference is between an MEL and a CDL. An MEL, once again, stands for minimum equipment list, but basically what it means is that the aircraft has a certain amount of things. I mean, in every different system, the aircraft has, so many hydraulic pumps. It has so many, VOR tuners. It has so many like you can even go down to as minute of things as even just like pilot coat hangers. It even has stuff for that. But basically, the FAA has come out and said that if the aircraft has something that is inoperative or not working or whatever, it basically has a manual saying what precautions we have to take as dispatchers and also for the pilots, what we have to do if the aircraft is missing or has certain things that aren't working. Now, for the most part, you're going to find that there are hundreds and hundreds of MELs. In fact, there's probably over 1,000 MELs just for the CRJ 700. Most of them aren't going to have any restrictions at all. They're just going to be an MEL, and there's nothing that we necessarily have to do as dispatchers to really, we don't even, other than just knowing that it's there, there's nothing else we need to do. However, there are several MELs that are going to have performance restrictions. A perfect example would be something like a weather radar system. That's the system on the airplane. It's like a Doppler radar up in the nose of the aircraft that while the aircraft is flying, it can sense whether you're flying into hazardous weather such as thunderstorms and heavy rain and things like that. Now, if the weather radar, there is only one of those installed on the aircraft. Now, if it's not working, then we have to be able to dispatch the plane. The restriction is that the plane cannot fly in or around or near any hazardous weather like thunderstorms. So as dispatchers, when we're planning the flight, we have to take that into consideration, and we have to route that flight or even see if we can route the flight avoiding hazardous weather. In some cases, it's not going to be possible, and that MEL itself would ground the airplane. On a nice day where there's no weather, then it might not have, it might not be restricting us at all. So just take that into consideration, and obviously that's just one example out of, hundreds of examples that are potentially in here. The manual itself is pretty large, so I've gone through and I've highlighted the areas that you need to look through. I'm going to bring this up for you here real quick. I'm going to give you a few examples. Oops, sorry, I'm on the wrong. Just accidentally got all the way out of it. So as you can see, it's 274 pages long. So just the front page here. So here is the basically your table of contents. So as you can see here, I've highlighted the different areas. Air conditioning, auto flight, communications, electrical power, flight controls, fuel, ice and rain protection. All of the highlighted things are the chapters that you need to go through. Now, some's going to have more than others, but just as an example, I'll scroll down here, and we'll look at. Well, first off, I should go back and say, so I've highlighted the chapters. Then as you scroll down here, I want everyone to read through this section here. It says explanation of format. It basically tells you how to read each of these MELs. It explains what they mean, you know, what a specific thing means. So read through this. It's just going to kind of tell you how to understand the MEL itself. And like I said, we are going to look at one, but read through this. Let me get down here. Okay. So here is an example. Chapter 21, Air Conditioning. So this is, as you can see up here in the top left-hand corner, so this box is the MEL. So you're going to be looking at the box. The MEL number here is up in the top left-hand corner. It is MEL number 21-22-1 alpha. The name is Recirculation Fans, and it's applicable to the CRJ 700. So now one thing you also are going to notice in this manual is for the CRJ 700 and 900. So just make sure, we're only obviously looking at CRJ 700 MELs, so there are a bunch in here for the 900. Just disregard them, but they will normally say it right here. It'll say applicable to CRJ 900, and just disregard those. So this is the recirculation fans. So we're just going to read here. This remarks or exceptions. This is going to tell us what the potential restrictions are for this MEL. Now this says may be inoperative provided the affected fan is deactivated. Okay, so that's all it says. And then you're going to, in addition to always want to read the remarks and exceptions, and then you also always want to read over here on the right side the operations procedure. So now this is going to tell us, you know, if there's anything specifically for the dispatch or the flight crew that they have to adhere to. It says operations procedure, none required. That just means there's no restrictions. There's nothing that we need to do any special thing for. So that's just one example of an MEL that really doesn't affect anything. So now you can see this next one, recirculation fans, applicable to the CRJ 900. So you're going to see it's pretty common. So I've gone through each chapter and I've highlighted the MELs that I want you to pay closer attention to. So now I'm going to scroll down until we get to the very first highlighted one. And here it is right here. MEL 21-31-1 Bravo. It's automatic cabin pressurization controllers. So the remarks and exceptions say both may be inoperative provided, and then it says cabin pressure controller panel pressure monitoring function of cabin pressure monitoring subsystem is operative. Okay, that's something that the flight crew checks. This next one, though, I've highlighted. Number 2 says operations are conducted unpressurized at or below 10,000 feet mean sea level. And then the rest of it, which is unhighlighted, is just pertaining more to the crew. So what does that mean to us as a dispatchers? Well, if you have this MEL on your aircraft, that means that you have to figure out a route and have to file this aircraft at 10,000 feet or less. Now, normally we like to fly clear up into the 30,000 foot range, so obviously this is a major restriction. But this MEL is basically allowing us to operate as long as we adhere to that restriction. Now, that's going to be very difficult in some areas of the country to adhere to a 10,000 foot flight level restriction. So, and also we're talking about that it has to be unpressurized. So that means, and that is the reason for the restriction, is because with this MEL there is no cabin pressurization. So the higher you get, that's going to be the air pressure is not going to remain lower as the aircraft climbs. So that's why it's limited in altitude. You look at this next one here, the emergency depress switch guard. This says may be inoperative or missing provided that both air conditioning packs are operative and operations are conducted at or below 15,000 feet MSL. Anyway, so you can kind of get the idea of the different restrictions and what you may have to deal with. So these first ones here that are highlighted are all they're all pretty similar, and you're going to find that a lot of these are similar. This one I should not have highlighted because it's for the 900, so disregard. If it says 900 and it's highlighted, that was just by accident. Just disregard it. Here's one here, 21-33-1, cabin pressure control panel, pressure monitoring function. And I'm just going to skip directly to the highlighted part. It just says operations are conducted at or below flight level 300. So that's a little bit better for us. We can easily, fly below 30,000. It is a restriction, but not obviously as big of a restriction as 10,000 feet. So here's another one, 21-50-1, ground air conditioning connection cover. Operations are conducted at or below flight level 250, and extended overwater operations are prohibited. Generally speaking, extended overwater operations means more than 100 nautical miles out in the ocean, or away from land, essentially. Air conditioning packs, 21-51-1 alpha, applicable to the CRJ 700. Operations are conducted at or below flight level 310. So anyway, as you can kind of see, continue kind of going through here. I'm going to skip down a ways. Uh, 21-55-3 alpha, cargo exhaust shutoff valve. Live animals are not carried in the aft cargo compartment. That's the only restriction. That just means you need to call ahead to the next station, or call the station that it's leaving from, make sure they don't load any live animals. I'm just going to do one more example here. Okay, here's a good one. This is Chapter 22, Auto Flight. 22-10-1, the autopilot system. And you can also see that additionally this has another highlighted area right up here. It says RVSM/Cat2. That means when you see that up there, that means it's trying to just call out this MEL a little bit more than other MELs, meaning that there is an RVSM restriction and a Cat2 restriction. Now Cat2 is referring to the ILS approaches. So that means you cannot go anything lower than a Category 1. Category 2 would be restricted. So this is the autopilot. The reason why it's Category 2 restricted is because in order to fly a Cat 2 approach, you have to have autopilot. Autopilot actually has to be on all the way down to 100 feet. And so if autopilot is not working, obviously you can't do a Cat 2 approach. The other thing is when you fly into RVSM airspace, and remember RVSM airspace, flight level 290 to flight level 410, stands for reduced vertical separation minimum. So in order to fly in that airspace, because the separation in that airspace is reduced, you must have a functioning autopilot up in that airspace. So this says in the remarks, except where en route operations or approach procedures require its use, it may be inoperative provided the altitude alerting system is operative. How do you know if the altitude alerting system is operative? Well, if it's not operative, then you would see a separate MEL for that system. So that's how you know whether things are operative or not. And you just can look and say, well, do I see an MEL for that? If you don't, that means it's operative. And so this is saying, note, autopilot is required for RVSM operations. And then down here on the right side, operations procedure, it says Cat 2 operations prohibited, RVSM operations not authorized. So that's just another example, but I want you to scroll through the chapters and just pay close attention to the highlighted MELs. you're going to see, you'll see some trends, inside of certain chapters, like, in this auto flight area, you'll see more RVSM Cat 2 restrictions. When you're in the air conditioning area, you'll see more flight level restrictions, like we already saw, stay below flight level 250 or 310. When you look at like the weather or the ice and rain protection chapter, you're going to see a lot of restrictions for you cannot operate into known or forecasted icing conditions. And just to recap on icing conditions, everyone should remember that icing conditions mean a temperature of 10 degrees Celsius or less with visible moisture present. So when it's telling you that you cannot operate into known or forecasted icing conditions, that specific criteria is what you're looking for. You're looking for, okay, well, is the airport I'm leaving from 10 degrees Celsius or less with icing conditions present? Or is the area that I'm going to fly through, does that exist there? Does the destination that I want to land at have icing conditions? That's what you're looking for. And if it does, then you cannot dispatch that aircraft. So the ice and rain protection has a lot of those. There's also a lot that say cannot fly into just flat out visible moisture. There's a lot that say operations are conducted in day VMC conditions only. And that stands for daytime visible meteorological conditions. And when we say VMC, that means VFR, visual flight rules. So that means visibility above 3 statute miles and a ceiling above 3,000 feet. So that is considered VFR, and you can't enter clouds when you fly in VFR. You have to stay clear of clouds. So basically, you have to be able to operate, in total daytime VFR conditions. So you're going to see some of those. Those are the ones that I really want you to pay attention to. Flight level restrictions, weather restrictions, icing restrictions, RVSM restrictions, Cat 2 restrictions. You can see this one here, 30-81-1 Charlie, ice detection systems. Operations are conducted during the day. And when it says during the day, each airport has a sunrise and a sunset published for that airport. So if you're wondering, well, what constitutes as during the day, then you actually need to just bring up that airport individually, and it'll tell you right on the airport information for that given date, May 16th today, sunrise is this time, sunset is this time. And operating in the daytime means that you operate between sunrise and sunset for whatever is published for that airport. I'm just going to see if there's any more. I'm going to scroll down a little further here. There's other restrictive MELs, such as like the APU as an example. Now the APU is not going to actually show you a restriction for dispatch, but it should, in our heads, if you remember talking about the APUs, well, the APU is required to be operative for engine start. It also becomes a passenger convenience type item. So remember, if the APU is inoperative, when the plane is at the gate and the engines are not on, the APU is what provides the air conditioning. So if you're at a hot, it's a really hot day at a warm temperature area of the country, airport, wherever, and that can honestly, it could be anywhere on any given day depending on the weather. So if you have that, just know that that plane is going to be heating up while it's sitting there at the gate. You're going to get a lot of calls from pilots, complaining, and oftentimes they're going to refuse the aircraft. They always call it a passenger safety issue, especially if there's really old people on the plane or if there are young children, infants. The pilots do not like to take planes that are super, super hot inside when they have infants and elderly people. So just know that. And then in addition to that, if we dispatch a plane with an APU inoperative, or if it's an MEL that says that we cannot use the APU, then that means that wherever we go, and until that's fixed, we need an air start or a huffer cart in order to start the aircraft. So we need to make sure that whatever airport we're dispatching to has that item available for us. We have to call ahead, ask them, say, hey, we're going to need an air start. And in addition to that, remember the APU also provides the ground power or the electrical power when the engines aren't on. So if the APU is not working, not only do you not have the air start, the air conditioning, you also don't have electrical power. So wherever it goes, it needs a ground power unit, a GPU, and an air start capability at that airport. You have to call ahead, get whoever you talk to, if they verify that it is working and that they have those items, you need to get their name, write it down, and pass along that information to the system controllers. Just to, that's a really, really big thing, because if we end up sending a plane somewhere and we didn't call to verify that they had those items and it got there and then they shut off the engines and then we find out that there's no air start available, then that means that plane is stuck at that city until we have to send maintenance out on a road trip. It's probably going to cancel the flight and everything else. So we can really kind of get ourselves into some hot water if we don't follow the guidelines. But that's just an example of an MEL that doesn't necessarily have a dispatch release or dispatch performance restriction, but it's something that we need to be proactive about to let the downline people know that we need certain items in order for that flight to be able to operate. But anyway, I just want you guys to go through the MELs. At the very end of this manual are the CDL items, and the CDL stands for Configuration Deviation List. That basically is talking about parts that are on an airplane that can be missing, such as like gaskets and seals and just little things like that that can be missing from an airplane. And then the manual from Bombardier, the manufacturer of the CRJ700, basically says, okay, well, this seal can be missing, and you have to have a performance penalty of 40 pounds reduced at takeoff. And anyway, just kind of read through those. They're not really a big deal. I really want you to focus more on the MEL items and then the application of how we apply those and the operations procedures on the MELs. And especially, I've gone through this whole thing and I've highlighted really the most important ones that I want you guys to look at. There's also a PowerPoint presentation in here that talks more specifically about MELs that are dispatch restrictive. So it's going to talk about your air conditioning packs, your APUs, your autopilots, anything that has a major dispatch restriction. It's a really short PowerPoint, but go through that. And I know I say this every day, but if you have questions or if you have problems or anything like that, please let me know as soon as possible. Questions on anything, let me know, email, text. I'm always available. But other than that, yeah, enjoy today's stuff, and we will see you again tomorrow.